Thank you very much, folks. Thanks.
In his stand-up and TV career, Brent Butt's brand is lighthearted, quirky wit.
I am not a high-energy, angry comedian.
Now his first novel.
I have something in my head, and I have to get it out, or I go mad.
And it is dark, grisly, and already huge. The novel does draw on Butt's experiences in the stand-up scene back in the 1990s. Ian sat down with him at his favorite Vancouver lunch spot to reflect on comedy then and now.
All right, well, thank you very much for sitting down with us. You've lived in Vancouver for quite a while.
30 plus years now.
Well, and same for me. I've been here for about 30 plus years, but when people ask me where I'm from, I still say New Brunswick. Well, what about you?
I never say New Brunswick. No, I've never, they would know I was lying. No, I mean, it depends sort of where I am, but like, I usually say I grew up in Saskatchewan. I live in Vancouver, I grew up in Saskatchewan.
I mean, I think of you as a Saskatchewan guy, like as a comic from Saskatchewan. But after all these years in Vancouver, do you think this city has kind of made its way into your comic sensibilities at all?
I don't know, my comic sensibilities? I mean, it suits my comic sensibilities. I think I settled in here well because of it. Like, I'm a pretty laid-back guy. I'm not a high-energy, angry comedian, you know. Yeah. And Vancouver's got a very natural, laid-back vibe. So, I always say I never moved here. I just came here to do some shows and never left, you know. I've been in Vancouver for 30 years.
Yeah. But you keep doing new stuff, trying different projects, and the most recent one, of course, is a novel, a dark psychological thriller. Much like Corner Gas.
Yeah, very, very similar. Yeah, it was a big departure. It surprised a lot of people. Like, I actually had a publisher phone me up and say, hey, we're interested in you writing a book. You have any interest in writing a book? I said, well, I'm actually just finishing up writing a book. And they were like, oh, great. I think they thought it was going to be a fun, funny romp, or like Brent Butt finds his favorite hot dogs across Canada. That's kind of...
Well, except for the murders and the violence, yeah. It's a fun romp. But I kind of was thinking, like, you're taking a big risk here, right? Were you nervous at all before the novel came out that maybe this was not what people were wanting or expecting from you?
I wouldn't say that I was nervous about it. I was conscious of that. But I sort of feel like I'm really project driven. And I don't really do things based on what I think the end result is going to be. I probably should do it more. I should be more cognizant of how successful will this be. But really what I do is, I've always been like this ever since I was a kid. I have something in my head and I have to get it out or I go mad. And so that's sort of what this was.
So it's been well reviewed. It's selling really well. So obviously there's an audience that...
#1 national bestseller.
Wow. I'm shocked you were able to just smoothly fit that in. Incredible. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Listen, my favorite part of the book is not the main part of the book. For me, it's the little insights into being a comic on the road. It's about the lousy motel rooms and checking out the venue and drunken hecklers, and it's not glamorous, but it has its moments. And I wonder, do you miss that part of your life probably 30 years ago?
I wouldn't say that I miss it, but I weirdly look back fondly on it. It's one of those things that you look back fondly on now that you're out of. Yeah. You're maybe staying in nicer hotels and you're playing nicer rooms, but I wouldn't change anything either. Like, you have to go through that muck. You have to dodge the odd ashtray in order to get good and to develop a thick skin. It's one of the things I wanted to do with this book, is sort of let people know, what it's like being on the road as a struggling comic, living hand to mouth. I used to go on the road for a month and a half and come home with like $80 less than I started with. You're really just surviving. And all the little battles. And I also wanted to touch upon sort of how delicate comedy is. Like, as a comic playing these rough rooms, one of the first things you do is you go in early and you scout and you see what's going to get in the way, what's the distractions, what's going to kneecap me tonight, and you try and mitigate that. Mm-hmm. That's a big part of your job as a comedian on the road. It's sort of like being your own producer.
I have a big head, can you tell? That's a big noodle on me, huh? Big skull. Does it show up under the lights? I'm concerned, actually. My head is 27 inches around. I think that's too big, isn't it, for a head? In fact, your head's too big if you've ever felt the need to measure it, probably. I think. Get me the tape, honey. I'm sick of not knowing.
Society's a lot different than it was in your early days, 25, 30 years ago. We're so polarized as a society. There is cancel culture. Do you worry about new comics now, or do you envy that they're at the beginning of their road?
No, neither of those things. I don't really worry about them. I think the business always has a way of sort of culling itself, gleaning itself. And the people who are in it for the right reasons tend to thrive or at least survive. And the people who are in for the wrong reasons tend to sort of knuckle under and fall by the wayside. Yeah. And that's one of the things I think where we're at in comedy, what I see in this country especially, we have a real surge of funny, young, real original thinkers. I love watching young comics now, and there's so many people that are in it for the right reasons, because the notion of you getting rich doing Canadian stand-up comedy is pretty slim. So people they're getting into it for the right reasons, for the craft, for the art of it, and it really shows. Like when I watch young comedians now, I'm blown away how original they are.
So actors in the United States just went on strike. The strike was settled, but artificial intelligence is one of the issues. Our producer Greg went to ChatGPT and asked them to write a joke in the style of Brent Butt. So why don't you read what came out of there?
ChatGPT knows my style?
Well, you tell me. Here's the joke they came up with.
If I don't know my style, how does ChatGPT? Well, I like it's a riddle. You got me nailed, ChatGPT. That's been my bread and butter for years. King of the riddle, that's what they call me. Why did the computer go into therapy? Because it had too many unresolved issues with its motherboard. See, now I think if you had said, write a joke in the style of anybody, ChatGPT would have just reached into his little riddle sack and pulled this out, don't you think? I think our fears of AI should be quelled by this.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. How concerned are you about AI and the future of comedy?
I'm woefully ignorant, first of all, to technology in general, never mind cutting edge, futuristic technology. Not quite sure how the phone works, but...
do you even have a cell phone? You have one, right?
I do, yeah. That was like a little slight on your part there with that. Like, do you even have a cell phone, you hillbilly? Yeah, I'm not overly worried about AI, but I do think it's something. It sounds like. Here's what gets me worried: people who really know and understand this are worried.
Yeah,
that's what gets me. So for me, I'm sort of like on the airplane, and you feel a bump, and I look right away to the flight attendant. Are they concerned? If they're not concerned, I'm okay. But we're on this airplane right now, and it's getting a little bumpy, and you're looking over, and the captain and the flight attendant are huddling. They're looking for the parachutes.
Yeah.
So to that degree, that's what worries me a little bit. People who seem to know about this stuff are like, let's put the brakes on this a little, because there is a tipping point, the singularity, right? Where at a point where the artificial intelligence becomes smart enough to realize that we shouldn't be the ones programming it, and it clicks over and takes over.
Sounds like your next novel.
Yeah, me writing science fiction, that'd be really... And then he picked up the shiny thing that made the buzzy noise. I'm a real science whiz.
It's been a remarkable career, stand-up, writer.
Am I done?
Well, no. Anyway, I just want to say...
Is this where I get yanked out of show business?
Well, no, you get yanked out of the interview. Anyway, and now like a best-selling author. It's fantastic. So even though you messed up my extra here, nice talking to you.
That's me. That's my rep right there. Good talking to you.
And this may not be Butt's last foray onto the bestseller list. He is well into writing his second book, unrelated to the story in Huge, but also expected to be a thriller. Investment in solar is now beating out oil, but Canada is lagging behind.
We know that renewable energy can thrive in Canada. We know that we have the resources to do it.
What needs to be done for the country to catch up? Renewables are surging.
Hydro, wind, solar, and biomass.
Powered now by profit.
They are being driven by market forces.
Making a climate goal at COP28 actually within reach.
It is possible, and it is cheaper than doing anything else.
Can this trend break the climate doom spiral? Nicole Mortellero shows us 3 key developments fueling a dramatic transformation in renewable energy, the challenges it faces and the possibilities it opens up.
This heat wave is gripping parts of Europe with temperatures reaching more than 40 degrees Celsius.
Florida's normally warm coastal water is now more like a hot tub.
Poor air quality is caused by more than 150 active wildfires.
Look at the mayhem caused by torrential rain.
Canada's worst wildfire season on record.
Climate news can be overwhelming. It's easy to feel powerless with missed targets and grim reports. The world has a lot of work to do together to avoid a climate catastrophe. But to keep pushing up the hill, sometimes we need to look down it to remind ourselves that progress is possible. First, looking globally. The International Energy Agency projects that by 2030, demand for coal, oil, and natural gas will peak, and nearly half of the world's electricity supply will come from renewables, which includes wind, solar, and biomass. Meanwhile, in Europe, nearly a quarter of energy consumed last year was clean. One of the leaders in this transition is Portugal. The country aims to be carbon neutral by 2045, and at the end of October, it set a record. Its electricity came from 100% renewable sources for 6 days straight.
We were not using gas. We no longer have coal plants in Portugal. So we were able to use hydro, wind, solar, and biomass to generate all the energy necessary to cover the energy needs of the industrials and the households, and even surpass that needs. And we were exporting energy to Spain.
It's all being made possible due to lowered costs, driven largely by China. Its clean energy manufacturing and exports are surging, bringing down costs significantly. Globally, solar energy prices have fallen more than 80% since 2010. Now, wind and solar are the cheapest forms of electricity.
China's expansion of clean energy manufacturing capacity is also important globally because it creates so many positive benefits in terms of development and growth and so on. And many other regions want to replicate China's success.
It's good news for the climate crisis, but there are concerns about China dominating the market and pushing other countries out of the global energy economy. China now accounts for 80% of the global production of solar panels. And while it is the leading producer of coal, it's expected to see emissions decline in 2024 after a boom in its own wind and solar capacity.
There's incredible momentum around the world when it comes to renewables. They are being driven by market forces. So we have a climate imperative that countries are acting on that started the transition. But because we've seen this decline in the cost of wind and solar, that has now flipped, where we've reached a tipping point.
Here at home, the transition to renewable energy is happening much more slowly. In Canada, last year, only $2.8 billion was invested in solar energy, compared with $37 billion in oil and gas investments. However, globally, this year, for the first time, investment in solar energy is outpacing oil.
We know that renewable energy can thrive in Canada. We know that we have the resources to do it, but we do need to make sure that we are providing consistent signals.
Signals coming from countries around the world that recognize a move away from fossil fuels is needed to curb global warming.
Global demand for oil and gas are going. They are in decline, and they will continue to decline.
If we now take decisions, tripling for 2030, the renewables energy available. It is possible, and it is cheaper than doing anything else.
And a commitment of tripling renewable energy capacity by 2030 is one of the top agenda items at the International Climate Conference taking place in Dubai.
The heart of the climate policy discussion now, the COP conference in Dubai. Joining us from there, Susan Ormiston. Susan, renewables have clearly been a big focus this year.
Well, indeed, as you just heard, it's a new agenda item here at COP28. The idea is to triple renewables over the next 7 years, and 118 countries have already signed up, including Canada. For countries with a lot of renewables, it's a big commitment. For those who have little, it's not as much, but it's there and it's gaining a lot of traction. And also, you know, renewable energy is having this moment in Europe, partly because of the war between Russia and Ukraine. It was a big scare for oil and gas imports going into Europe.
Is there any pushback to this growth?
Yes, I mean, some skeptical that these pledges and declarations, and there are plenty of them here at COPs, that they actually happen, that in reality some of those promises fall short or completely disappear. Canada has signed up for this renewable tripling by 2030, but you know, we've got some pullback on incentives in Ontario, and Alberta has cut renewable development for about 6 months. So we'll see how it all ends up. And then there's the idea, if you put so much attention on renewables, do you lift the pressure on oil and gas companies and curbing those fossil fuels? And we talked to a leader from the Marshall Islands in the Pacific, Tina Steege. Here's what she said about that.
Of course, we need to scale up renewables massively, but it's only half the solution. We know the root cause of this problem is fossil fuels, and unless we also at the same time address that root cause, which is the production of fossil fuels, the burning of fossil fuels, the planet will continue to burn.
But there is no doubt that there is growth in this sector. We're hearing that all over this conference. And just this week, we went out to one of the largest solar plants in the world, just south of Abu Dhabi. 21 square kilometers of solar panels can power 160,000 houses. Now, you know, it's a small fraction of the energy use here in the UAE, but around the world, we are seeing its growth.
Susan Ormiston in Dubai tonight. Monday on The National, Nick Purdon explores the growing practice of taking small doses of psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms.
Microdosing saved my life.
At this point, we don't know if microdosing psychedelics actually has mental health benefits.
Microdosing has become super popular. There's people from all different ends of the spectrum that are using the mushrooms.
Inside Canada's shroom boom. That's coming tomorrow on The National. And in just minutes, getting into the Christmas spirit by breaking a world record. That's next in Our Moment. Inside this run-of-the-mill home, there's a festive surprise. A record-breaking collection of Christmas trees covering nearly every surface in every room. All of those trees and the commitment to show them off takes a lot of Christmas spirit. And tonight, that dedication and the resulting record is Our Moment. One by one, the trees are counted, from the mantle to the kitchen, from the bedrooms to the bathroom. It's a Christmas lover's dream, all tucked away in this unassuming home in a small German town.
Das Rekordinstitut für Deutschland bestätigt den neuen Weltrekord. 555 geschmückte Weihnachtsbäume stehen hier im ganzen Haus. Und das ist Ihre Urkunde. Und wir sagen herzlichen Glückwunsch.
Ja, danke schön.
Dankeschön.
The record he broke, it was his own with 444 trees set just 2 years ago.
Ich gehe davon aus, dass das noch mehr wird, ja. Meine Frau ist dagegen. Ich dachte nicht.
Against it or not, this Christmas tree collector is still not content, vowing to make 2024 even more festive.
Ich gehe davon aus, dass es noch bestimmt auf 600 hochgeht. Mal gucken.
Wie finden Sie das?
Ich hatte gedacht, wir werden diesmal beim höchsten, was wir so erreichen können, aber scheinbar nicht. Schauen wir mal.
Can you imagine the undecorating? Well, thank you for being with us. You can watch us anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to the National's YouTube channel. I'm Erica Johnson. Thanks for joining us.